Chapter 20. When I spoke to Chris about the locks on the door, I mentioned that I needed a black dress for my date with Jordan. She gladly suggested that I wear a spectacular black number with a side slit up to my crotch. She gave me advice. "If you wear that dress," she said, "you will have to shave everything." "Everything?" "Everything," she said. I selected another equally seductive designer black dress, hanging alongside the infamous shave everything dress. It wasn't me. A little too risque and daring. I placed a pair of borrowed black satin pumps with red soles on my feet. Although they were daring, I took a chance. I had to steady myself because I wasn't used to walking in heels over 3 inches. The last pair Chris loaned me lay in ruins on a beach in Maine. Passing and taking a critical glance in the ceiling-to-floor length mirror, I had to admit, I looked damn good. Like I said before, I couldn't recognize myself because it wasn't me dressed in designer clothes, which probably cost a small fortune. It wasn't that young girl from Trenton, New Jersey, who was afraid of her shadow. It wasn't that young girl who thought that the world was fair, and I wasn't that young girl who thought she would marry her Prince Charming. He was married to someone else, and I died every time I pictured Brandon having sex with Angela. I died somewhere between meeting Brandon Charles and losing Brandon Charles. But now was the time to be reborn. Hell yes, I said, turning around and checking the back of my dress, which was cut to my waist. The buzzer went off twice, and I said to Jordan, "I'll be there in a minute." I didn't want Jordan coming up because the apartment was in a mess, and it smelled like sex. The smell of Brandon's sexual aroma, mixed with shower gel, layered the sheets. If I had time, I would have picked it up and placed it to my nose to get one more scent. I lay in it all day reminding myself that he was there with me, making love to my body. Kissing my legs, kissing my breasts and penetrating me. Just the thought of it made me wet. I had lost all shame with him. I had lost myself, and I needed some air, and someone new to neutralize his hold on me. "Oh wow. What a woman you are when you slip out of those business suits," Jordan said with a sparkle in his eyes. "A woman like you need the best in life that a man like me can afford." I smiled at Jordan and climbed into the car. He handed me a bouquet of red roses. When Jordan entered after me, he sat gazing at me. "You're so handsome in that tux," I said, straightening his bow tie. We complimented each other. "We make a great couple," he said. "I bet no one will take their eyes off you." "This is all too new to me, Jordan. I don't know what to say or how to act. I haven't had any training in meeting important people." "You don't need any training. You're smart and well-versed and have a good education. Most of these old billionaires are only interested in your beauty anyway. Stay by my side and you won't have a problem. Just go along with what I say and smile." He reached across to me and placed his hand over mine and squeezed it. Somehow, I felt a little comfort in what he said. With all this positive stuff going on, I still had to ask myself, what the hell am I doing here anyway? I felt as if someone dragged me into this life, and I was kicking and screaming to get out. It was just too stressful having to dress, laugh with people you don't like, listen to their stupid talk when I could be in bed watching a movie and eating a bowl of ice cream getting ready for work on Monday. Tyler, what are you thinking about?" "Oh, nothing," I said to Jordan. Thank God people can't read minds, I thought. The limo stopped, and his driver opened the door. We stepped out into a group of photographers and reporters. "Why are they here?" I queried. I held Jordan's hand tight. I harbored this fear of falling in the high heels, but most of all, I was just frightened by all these people. I imagined saying and doing the wrong thing. Ms. Sophistication I wasn't. Jordan smiled and said, "We are the movers and shakers of the world, and we are news, especially if we own and run the banking institutions. He turned facing the cameras. He loved the attention he was getting. I finally made it up the steps without falling. We stood in front of the door to the museum, and then someone shouted, "That's Tyler Burns with Longworth." A crowd of reporters surrounded us, and someone stuck a mic in my face and said, "Are you the mistress of Brandon Charles? Where is Angela Charles?" Jordan stepped in front of the microphone and said, "This is my fiancée and she has nothing to say at this time. Please allow us to enjoy the evening. This is a very important fundraising event. Children with cancer are depending on this money. Thank you." And just like that, the circle opened and we marched through and into the event. We were seated close to the stage. By the way the tables were arranged, Jordan had plenty of clout. He smiled, held my hand, and never left my side. After we took a tour of the museum, we returned to the table and waiters began pouring drinks. "I hope the champagne is to your liking." The waiter poured a full glass. I sipped a little of it. When Jordan noticed, he said, "Go on, drink. You're not driving, and you don't have to be to work until Monday. Besides, you are my fiancé," he said with a wink. I drank a glass full, and when I looked, the waiter had filled it again. This time I took it slow, but it was too late. I felt tipsy. Finally, I got the nerve to ask him, "What is this about me being your fiancé?" That was something to say, to get the reporters away from us. "I hope my past association with Brandon won't cause you any problems," I said to Jordan. "I don't let people dictate my life. You see all of those rich people at that table," he said, nodding at them. "I know all their secrets. Not all of them are as rich as they pretend. They come to me for money for their businesses. I decide their fates. I know where the bodies are buried, but I'm discreet and they know it." "Is that what's going on with you and Brandon?" "No. Brandon is a shrewd businessman. He has and can make me very rich." "I heard something about you from Brandon." When I said those words, our dinner lay before us. We ate as I watched Jordan use all of the many spoons and forks set before us. It appeared there were spoons, forks, and knives for every dish, and the food kept coming. I ate a small portion, and when the dessert and coffee arrived, I had had enough of the good life. The orchestra played something slow and easy. Jordan turned, gazed at me, stood, and held out his hand. The music barely heard, over the conversations of hundreds of people. When Jordan held me, surprising enough, I felt something for him. Maybe it was a feeling of security that I needed at this time. I couldn't deny that he was a handsome man. I was seeing him for the first time. I looked to his face and his eyes were closed. I needed to enjoy the moment, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it would be short. When the song came to an end, we both found it hard to break away from each other, and surprisingly I had my eyes closed. I followed Jordan back to his seat, with him leading the way, and holding my hand through a crowd of people trying to get his attention. Finally we made it through the throng of inebriated rich old men and their wives, and sat. The music ceased, and someone walked to the mic on stage. "All you beautiful women who aren't married, I want you to walk to the center of the floor and make a circle so everyone can see you." I looked at Jordan. "You have to go," he said. "It's for the children." I stood, closed my eyes briefly, and leaned into him and whispered, "Did you know about this?" "The only thing I know is that we have an auction every year, and it's different. Go on, it's going to be fun." I stood and smiled, bit my lip, and walked to the dance floor. "Now, gentlemen, you are going to bid for the opportunity to dance with one of these lovely women of your choice. Only one bid, and you have to be the first, and it has to be high. When you finish bidding, then you stand in front of the woman and hold her hand. When everyone has been taken, then the dancing will begin. The man in the black tux with graying hair smiled as if he was reliving his youth, and stepped down from the stage. He stood by the first girl and someone shouted, 100,000. A young man in his 20s stepped from his table and stood facing the young girl of 18. The bidding went fast, and because I was the last to get into the circle, and before the announcer could walk around to me, someone shouted, $1 million. Eyes grew large, whispers grew small, and out of the shadow strode Brandon Charles. I know Jordan didn't see that coming, and neither did I. He wore a black tux with the most elegant of white shirts, and a traditional black silk bow tie. His hair was combed back and it shined. His smile was to die for, and when he strutted to me and took my hand, I was in paradise. I heard a protest coming from the table in front of the stage, and it was Jordan standing and shouting obscenities. The announcer walked to the table and quieted Jordan. But he looked at us as the music began to play. It had to be you, and Brandon took me in his arms. Was this worth the $1 million? I questioned with my eyes glued on his gorgeous blue eyes made darker by his black suit. Absolutely. You're worth every cent, my princess, and you look like one tonight, he said, pulling me closer into him as the orchestra played on, changing the song to Paradise. And when you're sleeping near me, I'm in paradise, he whispered in my ear. His look penetrated my eyes and passed through, entering my body and settling on my core. He eased closer to me, and I felt him, and he knew it when I closed my eyes in a dreamy state. When I opened them, I noticed the attention focused us, and I pulled away. I tried to mask the intense feeling Brandon gave me from being in his arms. My hand shook and he knew. He knew that I was his for the asking and taking. Just about now your nipples are hard. I can feel them, he said, whispering in my ear. You can't feel them through this dress, I said, gathering my composure and looking down at my breasts, and knowing what he said was true. Can you feel me? He said with a smile, as he pulled me into him. See, I can feel everything you're feeling now. You love me. Just say it, he demanded. Our eyes locked. I love you, but haven't we had this conversation before? And the dance was over, and Brandon was out of $1 million. It was worth it, he said, still holding me in his arms. The couples had gone to their tables, and there we stood in the middle of an empty floor with the spotlight on us. Don't walk me back to the table, I said. Before I could get comfortable with that sentence and tell him why I had made that statement, Jordan was standing peering at us, eyebrow lifted and mumbling, standing behind me, taking my hand and turning me around in the direction of the table. Tyler, go back to the table. I want to talk to Brandon. I walked away, and when I turned, Jordan and Brandon were standing toe-to-toe shouting at each other. People were whispering and watching from their seats. I saw Jordan throw a punch, and Brandon duck and hit him with a hard right to the face. Jordan got to his feet and landed one to Brandon's jaw, and he countered, and Jordan caught one to the eye. It started as a civilized fight with two young men raising their fist as if they were in a boxing ring, and escalated to a knockdown brawl. People were standing on chairs to get a vantage point. I heard someone say, they've been at it since college. They're trying to determine who's the best boxer and wrestling champion of Princeton. They never did get that resolved. Maybe they will tonight, a young man said who was about their age and someone who may have gone to college with them. He looked around at the table. Brandon was the richer of the two and the best debater. It's more than that. They have been competing so long that they have taken things too far. Shame on them for making this night about them and not the poor little children. Shame on them for fighting over a woman. Will someone break it up before the evening is ruined and someone gets hurt? Commented a middle-aged woman wearing jewels that would make Queen Elizabeth envious. I know those boys, and they're going to hurt each other. Chapter 21. Jordan didn't say a word, when he dropped me off at the apartment. His eye bluish-red and swollen to the size of a plum. Clearly, he didn't want to talk about it. When the limo came to a stop, he was out and looking pensive. Maybe he was wondering whether I was worth the trouble. I had to decide that as well. I needed to weigh my options and determine whether I could work with a man who had risked his reputation on me. He must have read my mind. This was not about you, Tyler. It built up over time and finally came to an end. I reached into my small bag and pulled the key out and opened the door. He followed me into the building and said, "If you're thinking about resigning, don't." As a matter of fact, I was. "Where are you going to go?" "I haven't had any offers and..." We walked into the elevator and the door closed. When it opened to the floor of the loft, he began his conversation. "I can send you to work for a friend of mine where you will not feel uncomfortable. What do you say?" I have to think about where I am in my life and what I want to do. I need the money and I need the work. This is too intense for me now, what with Brandon and you fighting. For what? What was that about? I'm caught up in the middle of two rich men and someone is going to lose and it will be me, I said, exhaling. I studied his face and it appeared that all he was thinking about was coming into the apartment. I didn't let him in because in some way, I was being true to Brandon. It was silly and childish of me, but that is how I felt. But it was also stupid of me. How can you be honest to a man that is married, and not be honest with a man you can have now? How fucked up can life get? I wasn't ready for that answer. I leaned in to kiss him. The kiss was a kiss, two lips coming together. It was a kiss for a brother. It was devoid of passion. No arousal, no tingling of body parts, nothing fit. It was like a bad tight-fitting dress when you've gained too much weight. It was everywhere and it was nowhere. I tried harder. No. I knew that I didn't have it for him, but he had it for me. I felt his hard protrusion and I stepped back. I can't invite you in because I haven't had a chance to clean up and I'm embarrassed. I've turned into such a liar, I thought. That was me dying one lie at a time. I'm deceiving others and worst of all, I'm now deceiving myself. Then come with me, Jordan said. I have an extra room and you can rest and lounge around and have my maid clean up after you. As much as that sounds tempting, I can't do that. I hoped that if I stayed in the loft, Brandon would come to me. I knew he wouldn't after tonight, and I had to think and get some distance between us, and not have my thoughts corrupted by maid service, a handsome man who just fought the man I love, my need for male companionship and love. I needed to be love. 5 long years had passed, and I couldn't or wouldn't let myself go out on a date, for fear I would lose the feelings I harbored for Brandon. The feelings were so intoxicating and overwhelming. Now that he's back in my life, I find I'm doing the same thing again, denying myself the love of another man because I want to be with Brandon. I turned on my heels facing Jordan. Let me get something to change into and I'll meet you in the car. A smile of accomplishment washed over his face. But then it disappeared. I won't change my mind, I said to him. When Jordan understood that I would go with him, he smiled and walked into the elevator humming. I rushed inside and grabbed a bag and stuffed undies, a teddy, 2 pairs of jeans, white shirts, shoes, and 1 dress. My plans were to return on Sunday, to ready myself for work on Monday. I made my decision to get away from this apartment before Brandon walked in on me. I had no privacy in here, and that bothered me. I wanted to be alone in my own apartment with my own thoughts. I know that it would be impossible at Jordan's place, but at least I could get a chance to get acquainted with this man who wasn't afraid to fight for me, and didn't push me into anything. Rushing to change into something more comfortable, my phone rang. I left it on the bar because I was expecting a call from my father. I leaned over, picked it up, not paying attention, and answered, "Hello." "Tyler. This is." "I know who it is," I said. "Can you forgive me for that exhibition?" Brandon said to me. "I'm not angry with you. I'm angry with myself. I shouldn't have let it go on this long with you. I should have stopped you when you came to the apartment. We shouldn't have made love. You're a married man." "Don't call me a married man," he said with a heavy voice. "When I'm with you, I'm not married. What you are saying is nonsense, and I will not listen anymore. You can't will away Angela. You can't make her." I stopped because I realized what I had said. "Where is Angela?" "I don't want to talk about her. I called to ask you to be with me tonight, or I can come to you," he said. "Brandon Charles, have you lost your mind? Did you not hear me?" "Yes, I lost it the day I met you," he said. "I'm not going to be here tonight," I admitted. "Where are you going?" he asked with a trembling voice. "I can't tell you," I said. I heard the warmth and insecurity vibrate in his voice and reach me. "You won't tell me," he said with more strength. "Whatever you say, but I have to go now." I punched the button and ended my call. I turned out most of the lights in the loft and rushed out of the apartment and into the elevator. I relaxed a moment, breathless from the conversation and anxious to get out of there and to a place where I could breathe and Brandon couldn't find me. When Jordan's driver opened the door, I jumped in next to Jordan. "What's the matter? Your cheeks are so red. Here, have a glass of wine." He poured me some red wine and I took a long sip. I wasn't a drinker, but the events of my life had been fast and frightening, and I couldn't get a hold on them. As I drank a large gulp, Jordan sat watching. I couldn't read his expression, but it was as if he was the neighborhood cat who cruised at night, searching for the unsuspecting bird. I had time to notice that a car had been parked across from the limo. It was a fancy sports car with dark windows. Shuddering, I thought I was paranoid. Paranoia is not for someone as young. It manifests itself in the trauma-ridden. Like an overworked housewife and mother. I kept saying to myself, "It's not him. It's not him. I don't want Brandon to know that I went off with Jordan. What would he think? What was I thinking?" I caught myself worrying about what he thought of me, and it was simple. I don't give a damn. Let him think whatever he wanted. I had finally crossed over to not being the person I wanted to become. All it took was for my life to be disturbed and changed by a few actions. Mine at the top of the list. I couldn't blame anyone but myself. I made these decisions, and I had the awareness to understand that I had to live with them. "Are you okay now?" Jordan asked. "As well as I can be. I just need to calm down, and the wine appears to be working." "I'm not going to pressure you into anything, Tyler. Just let me take care of you for now." What did he mean, take care of me? There goes the paranoia. I didn't know that man. He was my boss, yes, but I knew nothing about him. However, I felt at ease with him, so I put away my thoughts and leaned back and enjoyed the ride. Maybe it was the wine that put everything out of my mind. I settled back with the wine glass in my hand and took in a slow, even breath. I felt the leather seats caress and massage my back and send me into a euphoric dream. Then the car eased to a stop and the engine cut off. "We're here," Jordan announced. That was short. As we waited for the driver to exit the car and open the door, Jordan looked to me and said, "I don't live but a few blocks from Christina's loft." Now I knew it was time to get another place. I was in walking distance of Jordan's apartment and Brandon's hotel. If Jordan was to remain in my life in whatever position, employer or lover, I needed distance. And as long as I wasn't sure about my feelings for Brandon at this time, I needed more distance. I thought about moving back to New Jersey. It was only a thought. I felt like Caesar when he crossed the Rubicon. There was no going back. I stepped out of the car. Jordan stood on the curb, holding his hand out to me. I felt like a princess in a fairy tale. But he was the wrong prince. I took his hand and stood near him. He placed one hand around my waist. I glanced about, and then I remembered that when I first stepped into Jordan's limo, there was a car. That same red sports car was parked across the street. The top of the car lowered now. This time I saw the brown leather interior, and seated at the wheel was a pensive Brandon, rubbing his opened hand across his mouth. Our eyes locked, and I turned quickly in Jordan's direction, smiling to prevent him from noticing Brandon. With my back to Brandon, I could hear the engine turn over with power. And I heard the car take off, as if it was an extension of Brandon, throwing a fit. The car left in a huff, spewing fumes of rubber and gas, and the roar of the engine caused both of us to turn in its direction. Jordan didn't pay any attention, or he already knew who drove that car. He kept smiling, as if he had a secret. And he probably did. It appeared that everyone had secrets, including me.